Thank you. Okay, let's run the thing.
And why are you restarting the server?
I don't know. I went here and I was like, that's not what I wanted at all. Here's my response object. So I console logged res right here, right before I called res.json. Here's our status code, status text, URL, headers. We don't have any. And here's the body that we're trying to get at. That's what we'll get at when we call .json on it. It's a readable stream, which is more complexity that you don't really need to worry about, honestly. But this response object has a method called JSON on it, right here. It also has a method called text that will just give you the text that is involved there. Does that help? Cool. Frankie.
You said response is an argument.
Response is an argument here in the context of this function, yeah. But it's also an object. The data type of it is an object, but the way it comes into this function is as an argument. Because it's a callback function, then the promise will actually pass that response in. So this is basically me saying, function, res, here's the body of my function, console log res, return res.json. I'm going to tweak the verbiage a little bit. I'm not passing. When I call a function, I pass. I pass the string to fetch. But this, when I'm defining this function and passing it off as a callback, I create a sort of like a spot in the function where it can receive an argument. I'm defining a parameter. I'm not passing it in. Does that distinction make sense? Kind of. It's basically the difference between putting a quarter into a vending machine and building a vending machine with a quarter slot. In this case, I'm building a quarter slot for my vending machine that is this function. Someone else is going to pass the quarter in. The quarter is the actual response. When I pass something in, that's putting the quarter in the vending machine. Here, in this context, the vending machine is fetched. The quarter I'm putting in is the URL that it wants to go to. Passing in, you do from outside a function. Accepting an argument is something you do when you define a function from within. So it gets passed in 100% of the time because fetch returns a promise, and that promise resolves with a response. Resolves with a response, passes the response into the callback function so that we can call .json on it. You can do whatever you want. Generally, we're going to call JSON on it if we're getting JSON back. That's why I think it's somewhat okay for this to be a little bit mysterious. I want you to know what it's all doing, but the sort of like intricacies of which promise gets returned where and when, okay, if that's like not something you want to mess with intimately. Other questions about this? Yeah?
JSON is a key inside the object?
It is both a key and a method and a function, yes. So the weird thing about objects is like they can have function keys that are functions. Let's say potato is function, console log. Ta-da. That's basically what's going on. I've got an object, like this response object, that has a key of potato whose value is a function. I can call that function on the object and get that function to run. More about that later, but you can only call JSON on this because it's a response object. All right, let's finish this up. We got to do toy tail stuff too. What does .json return? Does anyone remember? That was kind of a tricky one. Brendan. That would make a lot of sense. That would make a lot of sense and make our lives a lot easier. Then we would only need one then call in our code. but it actually returns a promise. The first promise resolves to a response object. When we call JSON, we get a new promise. Then we tack the other then on to deal with the promise that response.json returns. There's some fancy work that goes on to get, like this then, you'll notice it's not tacked onto the .json call. There's some fancy work that goes on with promises where if this promise returns another promise, you can then chain a then onto the original promise, and that chain is actually getting chained onto this promise that gets returned here. This is why I don't want to go into promises right now. That's a lot of stuff. Things I want you to know. This returns a promise. This happens first, then this one. The response is an object that isn't just the body, but when I call JSON on it, I'm asking that response to give me just the JSON from that response. And by the time I get to this then, what are we calling? Oh, no. What is data? Frankie. It is a parameter, yes. And what will its value probably be? JSON data. Bingo. At this point, our JSON data has been parsed out of the response. It's been parsed into an object. And we can slap it on the DOM.
At that point, would it be considered like node arrays?
It's sometimes an array. I don't know if they're necessarily node arrays. It's just like a JSON object of some sort. It could be an array of objects. It could be a single object, depending on what you ask the API for. In the case of my fetch over here in ToyTail, it's an array of toys, or an array of toy objects. I think the node array, that sounds a little bit more like an array of DOM elements to me, which it's not going to be. Yeah. I'm going to answer my own question here. Slap it on the DOM, takes that data, and creates DOM elements and sets their values to represent that data on the DOM. Frankie.
Can you console log data?
Sure. So, favorite trick? Because this is a callback, I can just pass the console log function as my second argument, and it'll console log anything that comes in. There we go. Does that answer your question? Does that make it worse? Is that more complicated than it needed to be? Okay, Jamil.
So this data is basically exactly how it looks like in the need.
Correct. Yeah. Because I did a fetch to localhost 3000/toys, it's a list of all the toys exactly as they are in db.json. If I'd done a different fetch to a different URL with maybe a different method or a different path, I might have gotten just one toy, or an updated toy, or a new toy I just created with its newly created ID.
So what we just saw once we console log, that
Yeah.
whole thing is that
Yes.
in your commented outline.
Correct. This is what the data parameter will be here. And because this is now becoming 2 lines, I gotta put parentheses around it. There's like a hot little tip, like trick where you can like OR them together, but that's gross. Yeah, same deal. First we console log the data, then we for each that. All right. Finally, is this optimistic rendering, pessimistic rendering, or neither? Let's take a vote on this one. Who thinks it's optimistic rendering? Who thinks it's pessimistic rendering? Who thinks it's neither? All right. It is, in fact, pessimistic rendering. Optimistic rendering would be if we did the rendering outside of the then. If we did it just like after the fetch or before the fetch, we would be optimistically rendering that this update for the species and name of this T-Rex will happen regardless of whether we wait for the fetch to complete. We're optimistic. We think that fetch will definitely complete, which may or may not happen. Pessimistic rendering means we wait until we get a response back from that fetch, ensuring that yes, the fetch completed, our laptop did not get struck by lightning, no one spilled anything on my laptop. So then we slap it on the DOM. I'd say a like button. Generally, pessimistic rendering is better, in my opinion. You're telling a slight lie to your users if you don't use pessimistic rendering. Sometimes it's okay to tell that lie. Most of the time, I think it's a bad idea. Ernie?
So fetch requests are asynchronous. How does optimistic rendering? How do you make the render without waiting for it?
You just do it right after. So in this piece of code, I could do, oh, I've got it over here. You're asking maybe where this data is going to come from? Yeah. What I have to do is like borrow this object right here. So probably like, no, don't want to save it. Something like that. So I've got the data. We make the fetch, I update the DOM while the fetch is still going and coming back. This line will run well before any of the then code would. I just chopped it off because you don't need it if you're doing optimistic rendering.
So you're effectively changing the DOM while you're making the fetch and updates data.
Correct. And before it succeeds or fails. Jamil.
So those two dot then lines make it pessimistic?
Correct. Not that alone, but the fact that I'm doing my DOM manipulation after those then methods complete, the fact that I'm calling my slapping on the DOM method that actually updates the DOM in a callback to the second then method, that makes it pessimistic. Yes.
So
The thens don't themselves make it pessimistic, but I need them. Yeah.
So,
Keep going. Yeah.
so you have the thens,
Uh-huh.
and then you do whatever changes you want to do. That's what makes it pessimistic.
The fact that we're doing it in the callback to the then, yes, that. Yeah.
So it's the difference between just doing a patch alone and then calling and
Not quite. You need both thens in order to make the Java,
like
to make JavaScript wait.
What's the difference between just doing the patch alone
Uh-huh.
and then doing the calling the
Oh,
callback?
what is that difference? Yeah. So without these, I can't get access to the data the fetch returns or be sure that it succeeded or not. If I ever need to know,
Pessimistic then?
if this code is here, yes. If this code is in the callback, no. This is pessimistic. This is optimistic. Assuming that we don't have these.
Where do you get Dino from if it's pessimistic?
Right here. Oh, if it's pessimistic, I would probably actually make this data. So Dino is the data that comes back from the server in this case. Yeah. So in this case, Dino has been sent over as the body of this request. The API has taken that data in, updated its internal storage, whether that's a JSON file or a database, and given me back, I'm assuming, an object with which I can update the DOM. But we'll have whatever keys slapping on the DOM needs. It'll probably be an object that's pretty similarly shaped to Dino, but that depends on the API. How are we feeling about optimistic versus pessimistic rendering? Jerry.
But like, I was wondering, like, if they gave us an optimistic rendering, I don't know if I'd be able to like think about it so much because I'm just so used to doing the whole pessimistic rendering, like where it mentions the API, and I don't know why like we would have to write an optimistic rendering. I'm still trying to figure out like what we kind of like testing kind of.
So your question is sort of more about how we decide between them?
I mean, would it just be like because we're trying to like make updates to the SPA and then that's like the whole question for optimistic rendering?
Optimistic just makes your UI look a little more responsive. Because it doesn't wait for the fetch to complete, it happens just a tiny bit sooner. And to me, if like it's that worth it to make your like button look faster when you're actually just lying and telling your users that like, yeah, this is done when it's not actually done, fine, go ahead. But it's not there yet in the database until and unless the second then resolves.
I also wanted to see like the slap
Didn't even write it. This is a completely fictional example. Let's move on to toy tail. Do we want to take a break? That may push into our feelings time. All right, let's say yes break, raise your hand now. No break, raise your hand now. Oh, that's so close. What the fuck? All right. 2-minute break. Run. Or the people who did. Let's talk about toy tail. And let's start with adding a new toy. All right. Our mission at this point is to click on this like button and to get the number of likes, which is really small here, to be a bigger number. Oh, did I? Should we do add a new toy first or increase the toy's likes? I don't really have a strong preference. Let's try another vote. Who wants to add a new toy? Who wants to increase the likes? Oof. All right, let's do that. First, I need to make the likes bigger. So let's just do that because my eyes hurt already. 5 likes. Come on. That's better. All right. So I've got a bit of a challenge. I want to add an event listener to this button. I, in fact, want to add event listeners to all of these buttons because I want to be able to click on this button and this button and this button and have them update the likes on the specific cards that each of these have. Where am I going to look first if I want to add event listeners to this button? Also, please stay with me if there are questions. That's totally cool. But if we have crosstalk, it's going to distract other folks. Yeah, Ernie.
Add a function that initially populates the page with the tours.
Yeah. Wherever we're actually creating these buttons is where I want to look. All right, so what I've done here is I'm setting the inner HTML of each of these divs as I slap individual toys on the DOM. When I create this box, when I create this H2 with the toy name, and I populate the image with the URL of the image from the JSON API, when I populate the likes, I also have this button that says like less than 3 in it. How am I supposed to get an event listener on that button if it's just a string in my HTML? Who struggled with this? Good, cool. This is a common problem with the inner HTML approach. Did anyone solve it? Yeah, what did you do?
I don't know if you call it a solution. I went with inner text and just creating buttons separately.
So you created the button separately. Yeah. Terrence, did you fix this somehow?
It's really quick. You can finish it, but I started, I was going to say that you got listener to the whole card.
Ooh, you got it. So you've delegated.
Yeah, you got targeted.
Cool. I don't want to dive into delegation yet. There is a way that you can add the event listener to the div and then figure out what got clicked inside the div later. But that's a whole other topic, and you're going to have questions about that. I think the best thing to do is to pull this button out, set the inner HTML first, maybe, if you're going to do that, and then do div.append child's button. Button's not a thing yet, so let's make it a thing. Const button equals document dot add create element baton dot inner text equals like sure, that one. And then I've got an object that I can call add event listener on. I want this to be a click event. I'm going to pass a function that I haven't even written yet. But besides that, this should probably work. Does this make sense? Generally, we have a choice between like creating elements imperatively and appending them to each other slowly, or setting the inner HTML of an element with HTML in it. I'm doing both. I'm creating a div manually, giving a class name of card, setting the inner HTML for the H2 image and the p tag. Then, because I need to add an event listener to a button, I need an HTML element object in order to call add event listener on it. I'm adding the button a different way. Once I've set the inner HTML, I can append the button to the inner HTML. And then the toy collection is like a list of divs, so I append this div element to that. You may
So you have to do both steps on the steps as well.
kind of, and I have to do them in the right order too. Function increase likes. This is going to be my callback. I want to show you how this works. Console log like button clicked. Okay, cool. Like button clicked. Like button clicked. Yeah. It's just going up on Chrome. The number here. It'll collapse console logs from the same line into just one.
I mean, when you will it update?
Maybe. Yeah. We haven't actually done the fetch yet. I'm just testing my event listener. Yeah. So, yeah, a manual.
Oh, wow. Okay, so increased likes is just the same rate. It's not just, it doesn't matter what we call it.
Yeah, no, I'm just naming a function something. This is our callback.
Oh, I see it. Oh, I didn't see it. Okay.
Yeah. We're referencing it here, and we're defining it here. I could do it as an inline anonymous function, but I kind of like having it out here because it gives me additional separation in my code. All right, I want to show you something weird. What if I do this before I set the inner HTML? So take a vote. Raise your hand if you think it'll still work, but the button will be before the text saying the name of the toy. Raise your hand if you think it will fail. Raise your hand if you don't know. Cool. All right. Drum roll, please. Oh, hold on. Screwed up. Totally screwed this up. Where the fuck is the button? Div.append, oh, plus equals. There we go. Okay, drum roll, please. I'm clicking. Yeah, it doesn't work anymore. The reason is, when you set the inner HTML of an element like this div, all of the other elements in it, like this button, lose their event listeners. So I'm playing a dangerous game here. When I plus equals it, I'm saying div.innerHTML equals the current value of the div inner HTML plus the rest of this. I'm saying, grab me the HTML of this like button, add this other HTML on it, take away all of the HTML that's there, replace it with this new HTML. The like button has been replaced by a clone of itself, but the clone of itself doesn't have the event listener on it. Be careful. All right, with that said, I'm just going to do this after I set the inner HTML instead. And this should be fine. Like button's clicked. Okay, what do we want to do in this function at a high level?
Right. Well, I think you need to pass in the toy object in order to say that the like prop version.
I'm going to broaden that a little bit and say figure out which toy needs its likes increased. Passing in the toy is 100% one way that we could do that. With a little closure around increased likes, totally possible. There are other ways too. Once we figured out which toy needs its likes increased, what should we do? Ernie, increase its likes. How? What specifically do we need to do to increase the likes of a toy? Fetch, yeah. Fetch a patch to the toy. Cool? We have one more thing to do, I think.
I mean, even though that's what you have in mind, but reloading the page would be also nice to see that.
Yeah.
Increasing.
And I actually don't want to reload the page as in like have a little anything
Oh, yes,
go.
could be.
I want to update the number of likes that exist in the DOM. When X event listener happens, I need to make a Y fetch and update the DOM in Z wave. We cool with this plan? Does the plan make sense? Have I missed anything? Let's do it. All right, I can think of two different ways to figure out which toy needs its likes increased. One involves data sets, one involves closures. There might be other ways. Let's take a quick vote. Who wants to do data sets? Who wants to do closures? All right, data sets have it, I think. We can maybe loop back to closures in just a second. So the data set is basically a way of stashing a little piece of data on a specific DOM element. A little piece of data like the ID of the toy that needs its likes increased. Why do I need that toy ID in this context?
Because when you do the fetch, you need to put in the ID and the URL.
Bingo. If I'm going to make a fetch to update a toy, I need the ID and the URL. Those need to be backticks. We need that toy ID to be a thing. All right. I need to decide where I want to stash that toy ID on the DOM. What DOM element would be handy to have that toy ID on? What's an easy DOM element to get to from this callback function? That's the question I really want to ask. Because whatever's going to be easy to get to from this function is where I should stash it in the first place when I have access to it. Which is probably up here, when I'm actually creating these cards for each of the toys. At this point, I have the whole object around. What's really easy to get to from this increase likes function? Yeah, slap it on the DOM is where we're actually setting up the event listener. But like, what DOM element is easy to get to here and why? The button that got clicked. Bingo. How can I get access to the button that got clicked inside of increase likes? I did here, but this variable is only available inside this function on line 37. I can't just say button.dataset here unless I have a way to find out which button got clicked. Chris?
We pass it the event as a target.
Yeah, I can accept an argument in this function, event.target, different name, same button. So now this button is the same as that button, I think, I hope. Adam?
You also use this.
In this case, yes, I think you could. I think you could. Frankie? Isn't which a constant? Yeah.
Are you reassigning it?
So different contexts, different scopes. In this scope, it's a constant, but it goes away when this function exits. Now, same name, different scope, totally okay. Adam?
If you do use this, is that referring to the button?
I hope so. I think so. I think it's the object that had the event listener attached to it, even if that's not exactly the one that was clicked. Uncaught reference error, toy ID is not defined. Well, yeah, that's right, because I didn't define that. Luca?
Can you explain what exactly events does in the function?
Yeah. Event is an object that's passed in by the event listener when I actually click on the button. It has a lot of information about what happened, when, and to who. To who as far as DOM elements. This is our event. It's the mouse event, and it tells us like where exactly I clicked on that, the path of the actual DOM element that it was clicked on, and the target, which is this exact button. There are a lot of buttons on this page. I can't just query select to get the first one, because that'll always be this button. Sometimes I'm going to click on Slinky Dog's like button, and I want the exact button that I clicked on. Event.target will be the button that got clicked on. Cool. So I'm going to say this, console log button.dataset.toy ID. Currently, this will be undefined every time, no matter what button I click on. Yikes. Why? What? Help, Adam.
In your slap on DOM function, you need to create a button.dataset.toy
Button.dataset.toy ID equals toy.id. Yeah. So to review, slap toy in the DOM gets called in the callback, the second callback, to my fetch to /toys. When we actually put all of these toys on the DOM in the first place, we have access to their IDs, their names, their likes, all of that stuff. And I can stash the IDs somewhere where our users can't see it, but it'll still be on the DOM later when the like button gets clicked. I'm going to stick it right on that button, and I'll show you that right now. Here on each button, data toy ID 1, data toy ID 4. That ID lives, and when I click this button, I can get that ID back. 4, 8. Cool? Sylvia.
Okay, what did you console log to get the okay. Okay.
So now, I can fetch. This is a pretty good fetch. I think it can be better. What else am I going to need in my fetch? I think there are 3 main things. They're all going to go in this object. What do we need? You and me. Method. Headers. Body. Awesome. Let's start with the last one. What should go in my body? Pizza, beer, water, air.
Likes plus 1.
Likes plus 1.
So that's
Ooh.
for toys likes plus 1.
Cool. So, yeah, now we have another problem. How do we get the likes back? We need to figure out how many likes there currently are and add 1 to that. Jamil, do you have an idea? Oh, so this should be an object. Okay. Toy, you said?
And I did
And where did you get toy, the toy
likes,
object?
likes.
Toy.likes, okay. In our case, I think that we'll have a problem here because toy isn't defined in the scope of this function. If we could get back some access to the likes that we had over here, we'd be in good shape. But this object is not going to carry over to this function, unfortunately. Sylvia.
Well, Matt shows me this little trick
Ooh.
that you can go on line 14.
Uh-huh.
You can pass the toy.
Uh-huh.
And when you're increasing likes, you can pass the toy as an argument.
Uh-huh.
And then it's gonna carry over to increase likes, but you also have to have it as an argument on line 14.
Right, which is also going to ruin our event thing here
But you
because we
can
need to
also
get the
have
target.
event on line 14, you can do event and toy.
Could do. And we could even pass the button from over here down into this increase likes. Woo! All right, closures are cool. I actually want to do this with dataset too. Since we're down a dataset road, let's keep going down a dataset road. I'm going to say likes equals toy dot likes. Ooh, unexpected token. Oh no, oh no. Okay. And then toy dot likes isn't going to be a thing either. I'm just going to comment that whole thing out. All right. So now, Button has a data toy ID and a data likes. I can get the number of likes back from the DOM just like I'm getting the toy ID itself. I just need to grab one more thing off the data set. Likes equals button.dataset.likes. And we want to do likes plus 1. Yeah? All right, I think we're in good shape here. I should probably console log likes just to be sure. Yeah, this is still an error, but that is 8 likes. This one is 5 likes. I think my data set works. Are we done with the body here, or do we need one more thing? Oh, yeah. No, thank you for that. The thing is, it worked anyway, which is a whole other rabbit hole that I don't want to go down right now. But interesting that happened. Let's talk about what we want to do to our body here. I think there is one more thing we got to do. Jamil. Yeah, we can't send the body as an object. It has to be a string. We're not responsible for turning this object into a string. We've got a method that we can use to do it for us. Adam, did you have a question earlier?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, when did you put the lights onto the button data?
Right here. Yeah. Yep. In either case, we're just like sending that ID and the likes either in through a closure or in through binding them straight to the DOM. All right. I think we're good with the body. What headers do we need if we have a body? Y'all did this great on the quiz. Don't be worried. Jerry.
So this is for the edit. We're going to do a content type. And then we're going to do application/JSON.
What? I think I'm trying to type my last name, maybe? I don't know. Cool. We probably don't even need an accept, but if you really want one, I'll put one in there. It's going to send us JSON either way.
Well, we do want to like update it on the DOM too. So like we have to like say like, hey, whatever you guys have there.
That's going to be separate. Yeah, it'll send us JSON either way. We do want that JSON probably to update it on the DOM unless we're going to do it optimistically. But I think we're good with content type. Accept won't hurt anything, but that's all we actually need. All right, what's our method here? Patch. How did you know?
We're just updating the line pessimistically to the API server.
Yeah. In this case, I think the most correct answer is because the API docs said so. Always read the API docs. This API does kind of a weird thing in my opinion, where it updates likes as a patch that is an update to a toy. Not all APIs will update a toy with a patch. Some will use a post to create a like instance, sort of like we used a post to create a vote in Mod 2. Just because this API uses a patch does not mean every API will. Don't memorize this pattern. Read the API docs instead. All right. I think we are good to go as far as this fetch is concerned. Method, headers, body. I think I'm on Captain Planet. Okay. What's going on here? Did it go? Did it work? I'm not seeing anything happen. One way of debugging this, well, there are probably two ways. Let's talk about both of them. How can I find out if my fetch worked? What's one way? Matt. Ooh, that's actually a third way that I didn't even think of. Let's go look at my DB-JSON. 31 likes for Mr. Potato Head. That's not what we had before. I must have clicked that button a lot of times. Okay. Oh, I think I did something bad instead. All right, we'll circle back to that. Let's talk about two other ways that I can debug my fetch request. Because I got options here. Sometimes we don't have a DB-JSON. What if I didn't have a DB-JSON? What if I had to like base my decisions on the output of the API instead? I don't know. What could I do? Could use debugger. Yeah. Where would I put a debugger? Like down here after the fetch? Yeah. I think in order to do that, I would have to put some thens on and look at a callback, which would work. And I could look at what I got back from the API. Ernie.
Console of the fetch. Yeah, console of the fetch and see what's coming back. The likes of if the object you get reflects the updated likes.
Sure. Yeah. Either of those would totally work. I'd have to do that in the then callback as well. There's actually a much easier way. First one I'm thinking of is just refresh the page. We're hoping that the page doesn't refresh automatically, but I can always test to see if I've actually changed something by just refreshing the page. Because we're getting new data from the server. Like this, I'm not done, but it did update somehow. All right, if I click this again, great, now I'm at 511. We'll fix that bug in a minute, don't worry. My fetch is doing something though, which is progress. Another really easy way is to look at the network tab. Let's clear this out just for less visual noise. Click this like button, boom. I got a fetch. That's an options one. All right, ignore the options requests if you see them in here. Take a look at our patch here. We sent 5,111 likes back. And what we got back from the server was the whole updated object with the image, likes, and the name. I can see that my fetch went through and I got the update I asked for. Maybe not the update I wanted, but the update I deserve. Are we cool with this? 3 ways to debug your fetches. Please use any and all of them. 1, refresh the page. 2, look in the network tab. If you don't have the network tab open the whole time, you're really missing out. It's great. It's really, really great as a tool. 3rd, look in your DB-JSON if you have one. All right. Let's look at this bug, shall we? Woody now has 5,111 likes. We can do some console logging around this bug, but why would it happen that I like clicked the like button once and got so many likes? Let me actually click it one more time and just like see what happens for the next one. 5,111. Now it's 51,111 likes. Yeah, Terrence, what's going on? Yeah, so here, when I'm on line 66, when I'm saying likes plus 1, you're saying that what's happening is something like stringy 5 plus 1. In Ruby, I think if you do this, you'll get something a little bit sensible. In JavaScript, you get 51. Not 6, but 51. 5 plus 1 in JavaScript is 6. 5 plus string, string 1 is, that's still 51. Cute. What JavaScript is doing is taking what I gave it, which is silly, and doing the best it can. It tried. Honestly, I would have preferred an error. Did I mean 51? No. But that's what I got. All right, this is exactly what's going on. Watch your data types in JavaScript. If you add strings and numbers, weird things will happen. If we have time, I want to show you a video at the end. But first, does this bug make sense? What should we do to fix it? Yeah, Matt, actually. Parse int. Where?
I mean, I would like to add it on like.
Ooh, okay. I love that. I love that. So likes, when we define it, is actually going to just be a number. We're never going to have to worry about it being a string again. That way, in the future, if we use this likes variable again, we won't have to parse int it. I love that. I'm actually going to even like make my code slightly better and say const new number of likes equals likes plus 1, so that I'm not doing math in my fetch. Fetches should have one job. Not to do math, but to put a new number of likes on there. Okay, so now we've got 51,112 likes, 51,113, 51,114, 15. We did it. Let's update our DOM. Let's update the number of likes on the DOM. All right, think about, should we do optimistic or pessimistic rendering? If you want to do optimistic, raise your hand now. If you want to do pessimistic, raise your hand now. Whoa, okay. We could probably squeeze in both. If we're going to do pessimistic rendering, what do we need? Jerry.
You're gonna need a fetch request.
We got one. It's right here.
So, we could attach on to the end,
Mhm.
the end of the promise.
Uh-huh. A then is a method of a promise. So fetch is returning that promise, and we're telling the promise, hey, when you're done, then. What do we pass into then? What data type is it?
We have to pass in a response.
Not quite. The response is going to be involved, but what data type is it, Pete? Yeah, it's a callback. And a callback is always what kind of thing? Doesn't have to have an arrow, but it does have to be a bingo. Function. Sure. I'm going to not do an arrow function just to be extra. If you're doing these the long way, you have to return. All right, so this data is probably going to be what? Adam.
An object,
An object. Yeah, what's going to be in that object?
the patch, sent over,
Uh-huh.
the likes, and
Yeah. The way this API works is when you patch, it'll send you back the whole toy with the updated number of likes. This number of likes is 51,116. Over here on the DOM, we have 51,115. Our job is to update the DOM with the new number of likes. The cool thing about doing this pessimistically is if someone's in another tab liking this toy, I can update it with the number of likes that is actually true about the database, not just 1 plus the one I had before. Not to shit on optimistic rendering or anything, but I don't like it very much. If you couldn't tell. All right. How can I update my DOM? What's going to be useful in updating the DOM here? Right.
Your toy ID?
Yeah. Why is the toy ID going to be helpful?
You're going to make a new call, find updated likes. You need that first.
Yeah. If I want to update Woody's likes and not Buzz Lightyear's likes, the toy ID can help me find that. True. I think I got another problem too. Where in this, assuming that we can even find the right card in this toy collection, where is the number of likes in relation to that card? Yeah. Yeah, it's in this p tag, and it's got like the word likes after it. So if I just like set the inner text of this p tag, it's going to be just like a number, which stinks from a UI perspective, I think. I could then like hard code, okay, well, I'll put the number in plus the word likes afterwards in that p tag, but that stinks because then if I want to change that to like a different word, hearts, stars, then I have to update that in my DOM in 2 places. Ugh. Gross. Brendan. Ooh. Ooh. Oh, I love that idea. You're saying like put a span just around the number of likes. Why a span?
It doesn't affect whether that is the other characters you have there, but
Mm-hmm.
grab these numbers
Yeah. A span by default is an inline element. It's not going to create its own new line, so it's not going to mess up my CSS. I'm not going to have to like write more CSS to make it disappear like I would for a form or something like that. A span just sits there and it wraps exactly that piece of text. I like the span. I'm going to give it a class. I can't give it an ID. Why not? Should not give it an ID. What would happen if I gave it an ID? All right, everyone recoil in horror. What happened?
Confused with me trying to grab it, the ID will flash.
Yeah, if we try and grab this thing by ID, it could clash. I now have multiple spans on this page with the same ID. IDs, like in a database, should be unique in your HTML document. Should always be unique. Chrome does fine with this page. It's not going to throw up at you. It's not going to give you an error. But I now have invalid HTML. Much better to use a class. All of these spans are of a class, num likes. Not the same ID. All right. So there are a couple ways I can go about this. I could put the ID of my toy on the card individually. Find that with a query selector. I could take the button, find its sibling of type key, and then go down to the span. I think the actual best thing to do here is going to be this. And if this is not the way you did it, that's okay. Part of my purpose here is to show you a good way of doing it. I'm going to put another class on this span. All right. This class is going to be different for every single one of the toys. Actually, I'm going to make this an ID because I can. And I'm going to interpolate in the ID. I'm going to interpolate in the ID of the HTML element and stick the toy ID in there. So Woody's going to have toy 2 likes. Buzz Lightyear is going to have toy 3 likes, right? Yeah, just in the span. And down here, we're going to have toy 7 likes. You okay with this so far? Now, in my second then, I can get that element by ID. And interpolate to get the ID that I'm looking for. Using the toy ID I've already got. Boom. So there's my 5116 that I want to update there. There's my 41 that I want to update when I like this Slinky dog. How do we feel about that? Not the only way, by a long shot. But I think it's the most concise. Sylvia. So every one of those spans on every single one of these divs has its own ID, toy dash, whatever the numeric ID of the toy is, dash likes. Important thing to know about IDs, they shouldn't ever start with a number, and you'll get weird behavior if you start an ID with a number. Which is why I slammed it in the middle there. Would be just as good on the end, but it cannot be at the beginning of the ID. But over here, I know what the ID is. So I can label this span for me to pick it up later off the DOM when I need to update the number of likes in it. This I think is better than traversing from an element that I have, like the button, up and then back down to a sibling of it. Ugh, just a lot of work. You can do it. You can go button.parent.children and then filter through those for the p tag and then set the inner HTML of that p tag. Skip it. Traversal is canceled. Let's set my likes. Cool. Oh, it does only work once. Weird. Why? That's a really good question. Likes.intertext equals data.likes. All right, let's go on a debugging adventure. I'm going to refresh the page and click this. Fetch happened there. Fetch happened again here. But the likes were the same that I tried to update with. Very interesting. Oh, I know exactly why this is happening. Does anyone else see it? Let's go back to the code. Luca.
Oh, we had to do plus equals to plus one.
Yeah, so here we're doing likes plus one. This is the part of the code that should be actually incrementing that. New number of likes equals likes plus one. Where did this likes number come from? Sylvia, what did you say?
Well, it came from what's already in there. So from the data set of the likes. However, if you do not refresh the page, let's say in the middle of the page, then it's going to be the same.
Yeah, the part I updated, the inner text on this likes span, is not the same as the data set that I'm actually getting the number of likes from. I've got a choice. Either update 2 places or stop storing in 2 places. I have 2 sources of truth for how many likes there are. And I love it. So everyone understand why that's an issue. 2 sources of truth. First, the data set on the like button itself. I stashed a number there just to make my life easier. Right? 511119 is the data likes on this button. But the number I'm actually showing to the user is 51120. When I click this like button, it grabs the 5119 off data likes, adds 1 to it, and uses that to patch. And now that this will not update and this is updated to 20, it'll never go higher. It's still making the patch, but always with 51120.
What was the second?
Second place is actually in this span on the DOM. So let's take a look at, right here I've got 51120, 5119, 51119. JavaScript will not save you from errors of logic like this. Ernie.
Wait, so what was the fix? Plus equals?
I think the fix is actually to stop using dataset. If we're going to store a number of likes here in a span where we can easily get them back, why not just use that as the number of likes? So let's keep this constant. Let's get rid of this dataset likes. And I like this line of code. It grabs the likes span off of each individual card. Once I have the toy ID, I can grab this likes span. Parse that inner text to an integer. And that way, this like span can be both what I update in my then, and also the original source of that data. So what I'm now doing, no data set for likes. Instead, the number of likes goes straight into this span with the ID of toy-toy-id-likes. When I click the button, grab the toy ID off of the button's data set. Here's the button. There's my data set, toy ID 1. When I click the button, I also look, I ask my document, hey, for toy ID 1, I want the element with the ID toy-1-likes, which is going to be this span. Then parse the inner text of that span to an integer, add 1 to that number for a new number of likes, attach that to the server. When it comes back, update the inner text of that span with the number of likes that came back in the data. Sylvia.
What is increase likes code?
New number of likes, you mean?
No, the function thing is called increase likes.
Oh, yeah.
This one is called on the back.
It's passed as a callback to the event listener.
I'm trying to compare.
Cool. Yeah. Ernie.
What happens if you open the console on that page and you edit the likes tag manual, the number of likes manual?
Good question. I'm going to push my code up just in case you want to look at it. Let's see if this works. Okay, great. Love it. Refresh. It stays. You were asking what would happen if I changed this to like a number. On its own, if I refresh the page now, nothing changes. If I click this button, what do you think will happen?
I'm certain that it's going to say 43 likes.
It will, and it'll say 43 if I refresh. This is one of the big flaws with using patch for likes, is that like I can set that number to whatever I want. We're trusting whoever calls that API to put in a sensible number. I could just as well put in, oh, I don't know, that many. Yeah, totally fine. API doesn't care.
Right, so this is where I love. So it's just busted or is there actually proper ones?
It's a feature of the API. If we're using a patch, like there's no way around this. We have to trust whatever is being patched or validated on the server, which JSON server just plain old won't do. There's no way to get around this as long as it's a patch. Like putting in a data set doesn't make it any harder for us to tamper with it in Chrome. In fact, like I can just do a fetch in my console and do the same thing with whatever number I want. Yeah, so this API is not good. That's not the point of this exercise. Yeah. Adam.
Can we try adding a new toy with a JPEG?
Sure. Well, except it's time for feelings. What part of adding a new toy with a JPEG?
Because I get this error,
Yeah.
like invalid line types or whatever.
Let's do this. Let's you and I sit down and take a look at the bug you got, because we are out of time, but I'm here till 6. Other questions about the stuff we did today? I'm actually worried that I just pushed my code to the master branch of this lab because I didn't think about what repo I was in. So sorry. I'll fix that. What questions do you have besides why did I do that? Oh, Paul. Chris.
So could you go back to the JavaScript file?
Yeah.
And then, so the part in the increase like functions where we are updating it DOM is basically just like the last 2 then things.
It's right here.
Yeah.
Yep. Pessimistic rendering. If we wanted to do it optimistically, what do I need to do? You and me.
Instead of the callback function of that, just do like remove those and then just do the outside.
So like that? Just like literally that's all. That's the only difference between optimistic and pessimistic rendering in this case. Turn roll, please. Shit. Almost right. I actually thought that was going to work. Sorry. All right. Problem is, data is not defined because that was the name that I gave that right here. What I want to do here is just like new number of likes, because that's all I got. But this will work, and we're optimistically rendering. That's all. It'll actually update that, even if the API is unavailable. So let me take my DB JSON down. Whoops. Oh, still updating the DOM. So many errors, our users don't even know about it. Love optimistic rendering. Tell me what your understanding of the difference is.
Which one used 2 dot ends, right?
This one actually doesn't.
Okay.
The thens could still be there. That doesn't actually make a huge difference. The difference is when I update the DOM. When does line 75 run in relation to line 72? Which one goes first?
Line 75
First, yeah, why?
because line 61 is still fetching.
Yeah, we're still fetching here. And 72 waits until we're done fetching. So we're optimistic because we update the DOM before we're done fetching. Pessimistic, we wait until the fetching is done, then we update the DOM. Literally the difference between running the DOM manipulation here, or if we wanted to, still optimistic. Even more optimistic in some ways because we're like expecting that the fetch started okay here, is gonna start okay here before we actually like run that line of code. Here, we're pessimistic again. Data.likes. And I'm gonna label these. New number of likes. All right, I'll push this up to a same place. If you have more questions, we're here for you. Thank y'all.